Calling all beings. Calling all beings.
Can I get a amen? Welcome back to Calling All Beings, everybody. I'm your host, DJ, back with the original gangsters of... Wait a minute. Are we missing Debs? Where is she? Of Calling All Beings. Oh, where is she? There she is. And right here to this side right over here is the co-creator of Calling All Beings. We call him Money Nathan.
What's going on, everybody? Happy, what is it, Thursday? Happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday.
I'm excited. Let's get to it.
Good to see you. Secondly, we have a young lady right here who looks like there seems to be some sort of a flower with, if she's changed her avatar, it's really throwing me off. Welcome back, Debs.
It's me blooming through my coat today. I'm blooming.
Aren't we all? We're going to bloom until we go in the damn box right there. And Court over her shoulder right there, if you look really closely, there's a Sasquatch looking in the window. And that, of course, is Courtney Marcusani.
Just out of a Hallmark card out there. It's crazy.
It is, man. All right. Great show tonight. Thanks to Courtney for hooking this up to us. Len Filppu and the director of Psychedelic in the Sky, Matthew Salter. So super excited that these guys decided to join us and share their experience or experiences and how, even Matthew came to make this film. I got to speak with Len. What an awesome guy. So without any further ado, party people, put those hands together for Len Filppu and Matthew Salton. Where is he? There they are. Okay, we got it. Welcome, guys. Good to have you.
Thank you.
Hello.
Thanks for having us.
It is an honor and a pleasure. And this is one of the great things, Len and Matt, is when you have co-hosts. If there are people in the community that you don't know, there's a fairly good chance that that one of these other folks will know you and know your story and bring it to our attention so that we can have you. Hello, Valhalla Law, Rocker Chick. A lot of our fans from True Crime. We have a True Crime and a UFO Bigfoot Paranormal channel, and we have friends here from both. So thank you, everybody, for showing up and hanging out with us. Boy, Len, Brockport, man, I had to look it up. I knew there's a SUNY Brockport. Is that where you went to college?
I did. I finally graduated from SUNY Brockport after spending a couple of years traveling around the country, hitchhiking around the country back in the early 70s, living on a commune and doing all those wild kinds of crazy things. But I grew up in that town. My dad taught economics at the college, and so we grew up there. And that is a hometown, Brockport, New York.
It looks like an awesome place, man. It looks like cold as hell because you're right near the lake, but yeah.
We get plenty of snow. I live in Northern California now, and all we did as kids, I mean, I think, I have two memories from when I was a child, the UFO incident and shoveling snow. So it's in between Rochester and Buffalo. So, we just got a lot of snow. They're getting less of it nowadays, but it's a good little town with good people. And the historic Erie Canal goes through the town, and that's why it's a port city.
Awesome. Yeah, I would love to see upstate New York. I'm from downstate New York. I'm from the Hudson Valley.
Right.
Hendrick Hudson High School, Montrose, Peekskill, right around that West Point area.
Yeah,
so I don't know enough of upper New York State, and it's something that I hope to know. If you would, I'd just like to start off. I personally am curious how you two encountered one another.
Are you talking about Matthew?
Yes,
or
you and Matthew.
Matthew.
Oh, Courtney's connected with everybody. Courtney's like the Kevin Bacon of the UFO community. So that we don't even need to ask that.
Okay, good.
Well,
Go ahead, Matthew.
yeah, Len and I met. We maybe it was 3 years ago at Contact in the Desert outside of Palm Springs. So I was kind of starting on this project to make a UFO movie. I'd been circling around different stories, but I didn't quite know where to start. I really wanted to try to do something different, something that hadn't been done before, approach the subject in a way that hadn't been done. Most documentaries are about kind of government conspiracy theories, or they're just kind of an encounter and that's it. But I was really trying to figure out a way to kind of make it my own. So I felt like I needed to go to a place where I could meet people who might have had experiences. So I went to Contact in the Desert and sat in on experiencer sessions. And Len was there and he spoke about the Brockport experience. And there's something about the way that Len spoke, felt very grounded. It kind of was like a classic 60s UFO sighting, yet kind of from what he was alluding to and what someone else had told me, there were other things that had happened in his life that may or may not be connected to that initial sighting, and that he was kind of processing it in kind of a spiritual way. And that kind of rung a bell for me in my own experience. And I wanted to meet with him. So we did an interview in my hotel room and chatted for a few hours. And, we've spoken a couple times since, and yeah, made this project. So yeah, we met at Contact in the Desert a couple of years ago.
Conferences are the best, aren't they? Like,
Yeah, for sure.
I've been to one Bigfoot and one UFO conference, and they're I hate to use the word phenomenal because it's going to sound like a play on words there, but they really are. I mean, because that's where the real connections are made. You can just look at Twitter and see all the people that met at the Soul Foundation and how people connected and smiles on their faces. And it's really a beautiful thing. So with that, you'll see, we'll kind of go in a circle here. So Money Nathan, take it away, sir.
Yeah, I was blown away by the short. It was incredible. I thought you did a phenomenal job with it. I hope that everybody who's watching gets a chance to take a look at that. We'll obviously try to put a link to that in the show notes. And like you said, Matthew, this it's something that no one's really doing in the space, and so I think it's a medium, the way you're telling the story that not only stays with you, but as I was telling Len before we jumped on, it's very evocative. It's a very evocative storytelling that you do with the animation and the visuals. And so, where did that idea come to you? Like, why did you decide to take that approach as opposed to, say, the traditional documentary? You just kind of wanted, and did this come to you like as an epiphany, or are you just really inspired by something else that you thought would be a good match to the subject?
Yeah, well, I went down the UFO rabbit hole, like 5 or 6 years ago, and I got really into the work of Jacques Vallée. I read Diana Pasulka's American Cosmic. So I was kind of familiar with this idea of looking at, the UFO world through a spiritual lens, and I hadn't seen anything like that. So I'd say, I started the project thinking it was just gonna be kind of a typical, I'll get someone's story, I'll animate it. But by putting myself in the movie, I've made a handful of films and I've never done that before. But I felt like it made sense to kind of look at my childhood. I was thinking about how I was raised in a religion that accepted ET life out in the world. So when I was watching X-Files and Unsolved Mysteries, and it was actually like my worst nightmare, I think, as a child, was the idea of being abducted. That was like what kept me up at night. So even though if I didn't know it was real or not, that was like my fear. So it was real in my imagination. So when I'd ask my parents, is this real? Could this happen? They'd say, well, maybe, but we believe, God said there's more than humans out in the universe. So it very well could be true. And so when I was thinking back on that, I thought, well, that's kind of a unique entry point. I don't know if that's normal amongst people when they ask their parents for them to kind of say, well, yeah, this could be true. And so I was kind of grappling with that personally. And, I was no longer a person of faith. I was no longer part of that religion. Yet the further I went into this kind of the UFO space and reading these stories about people encountering beings and lights and having these transformational experiences, in a way that was kind of opening up my own worldview, my own perspective, my own belief. in a way, I was like, this world that we live in is much more strange than I ever imagined. And kind of grappling with that. Is this real? Is it not? Have I gone off the deep end? But at the same time, I realized like, I haven't seen anything myself, so I can't say for certain that is 100% real. I don't have confirmation, but there's a belief, or I have faith that what I'm reading or when I talk to people, this is, potentially the reality we live in. So in a way, I was kind of seeing like this kind of UFO worldview, this being comfortable with uncertainty was kind of becoming like my spiritual principle, like my guiding light. And I was kind of thinking, okay, this is kind of an interesting way maybe to start the movie, to talk to an experiencer, and then maybe end kind of with this like realization or acknowledgement that maybe this is kind of a new belief system, or this is for myself, being openness to mystery is my spiritual belief. And yeah, there were a lot of threads we tried to tie together in this film and, bring it into a short 11 minutes. But I would say that was kind of like, I thought, okay, this is could be an interesting way to approach this subject and make it a little bit personal, but also with someone else's story. And yeah, I had never seen that in a film before, and I wanted to do that in the film medium.
Yeah, it's really, really beautiful. I know we have a lot of follow-up questions. I don't want to step on other folks' toes, so I'm going to pass it to Courtney and let her take a shot here. So go ahead, go for it, Courtney.
Well, Matthew and Len, I know you both must know Diana Pasulka, and she talks about, I'm not exactly sure if she talked about this in American Cosmic or where I ran into this, but she talks about how experiencers or people who are led into the phenomenon, I'm not talking about contact modalities now, but she talks about this weird synchronistic thing that I mention occasionally about books or films or some type of media that they encounter, and then it leads them on this whole trail. And so for me personally, I was introduced to a book called Miracles of Mind, written by Russell Targ, and that led me into SRI and psychic research, which is really why I went to the Archives of the Impossible and met Len there. And so I'm always fascinated by how people do have these kind of entry points through books or media. So I wanted to ask you, because your title of Psychedelics in the Sky is such a beautiful rendering of Len's experience, and just the short alone kind of transforms the medium in a new way. So you lose fear about this whole phenomenon and you're invited into the experience. How did that title come to you? Because I think it really perfectly portrays a whole new way of looking at the phenomenon.
Yeah, I was a little bit reluctant to use the word psychedelic in this project, because in a way, like, it's not about psychedelics. And I've actually made a couple of films in the past about psychedelics. One movie I made was called Santa as a Psychedelic Mushroom, which I made for the New York Times. So I kind of didn't want to get pigeonholed into this thing of doing psychedelics. So I was really reluctant, but that was, I worked on it for about 1.5 years, and that was like the best title. It just stuck. And that came through Len, actually. Len mentioned that when we were chatting the first time. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Len had mentioned that he had heard that phrase used, that, seeing something in the sky, like, it's an analogy of a psychedelic. It opens up your mind. When you see something like this, it changes you, or you see something that, not everyone has seen or has experienced. You can correct me if I'm wrong, Len.
I hadn't seen it used anywhere else. I think I coined it just in the middle of your, while I was sweating under your interrogation. Once you started questioning me, he didn't let me go. I said, no, it's enough. For me, the UFO experience began opening my consciousness. I was 16 years old, so I had not done any drugs or psychedelics or anything like that. But there was a beginning. It seemed as though it was an initiating incident, and I kept encountering more and more different kinds of anomalous experiences that in the end game kind of resulted in me just having a different way of looking at the world, a different worldview, an expansion of consciousness. And when I was talking to Matthew, it made complete sense that it just was like a psychedelic in the sky. If you remember the old Timothy Leary days, expand your consciousness and all that. So that was an analogy I used. But to answer Courtney's thing real quickly, I didn't get into this because of some, great book or anything like that. It was probably 1964 or 65. And I read an article in Reader's Digest. I don't know who remembers Reader's Digest, but
I do.
Yeah. And I used to read a whole bunch of stories at night, falling asleep. I could read 1 or 2 or 8. And I read one about a UFO situation. I don't think it wasn't Betty and Barney Hill, but it was very believable. The people who witnessed this were so sincere. The writer gave them respect, and it wasn't a Joe Pine show kind of mockery of this incident. And just something hit me that evening while I was reading it in bed. Yes, of course. This is completely true. Why are we so myopic and ridiculous not to take a look at this? So I really got the bug through that article. Reader's Digest condensed articles from other magazines. Could have been Look, Life, Esquire, Saturday Post, whatever. And that was it. And that started me being interested in UFOs. But I really didn't think I'd see one.
Yeah, I would say the book, I mean, there were many books, but, some of the cases in the 50s and 60s that Jacques Vallée recounts, I think there was one, Joe Simonton in Ohio, who had the pancakes given to him by these Italian-looking guys.
That
And
was
when I read that, I
Ohio?
thought, like, this is just crazy. Why are Italian guys coming out of these flying saucers? But then when Jacques Vallée kind of mentions that maybe you see what they want you to see, or you see what what's in your mind, that's kind of one of those moments where my mind was kind of, how do I, is this the world we live in, or, what's going on?
That's the difficult thing is this a projection? Are you experiencing this in consensus reality? Is it, it's very difficult. It's interesting. I was thinking about that the other day with the pancakes, or they needed water to make the pancakes, which is like, wait a minute, you should be asking for milk. I don't know. Anyway, this is fun.
And the pancakes are connected to the Irish elves.
Is that what it is?
I think they don't eat salt.
Mhm.
The kind of tradition is that they don't eat salt, and these pancakes had no salt in them. I could be wrong, but yeah.
This is why the Irish elves have no sodium related, illnesses. So this should be a
That's true.
lesson to everybody out there. Lower sodium. All right. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Corey. Are we going on to Debs? We good? Debs.
Yep. So I actually caught on to that title and when it was said in the film as well. And what was interesting to me about that is you have this opportunity to really help people who haven't had this experience yet understand what that moment is like when your brain is just exploding with that experience. So I thought, instead of asking a question, if you could just describe that for people so that maybe they could understand what that change is that makes you go from not having that experience and being maybe in a normal, typical life to having that experience, and suddenly your consciousness changes. So could you tell people, please?
Thank you, Deb. Yes. Just a little bit of context was that the evening that we saw the UFO happened with some synchronicities, some coincidences involved. The night before, the person who invited us to sleep out that night, the evening before, he said there was strange activity in the sky. He invited me up. He knew I was a flying saucer nut. I had a lot of fun being, the UFO resource amongst our gang. And he said that he saw strange things in the sky, that he saw green flashes. outside his window, and he felt that people were, something was watching him. It was the next evening that he invited me to sleep out up there. It was summer. It was August. We saw it on August 1st, 1967. And when I was leaving the house, I had a sleeping bag over my shoulder, and my dad said, "Where are you going?" And I said, "I'm going to Hurley's to look for flying saucers." And I walked out the door and took my bike up to Hurley's. I had never said that before. We'd never gone looking for flying saucers. There wasn't anything like CE5 or any of that stuff around. But it just came out of my mouth. We went up there, and there were 3 other guys with me. It was getting dark. They played a prank on me where they shined a flashlight down. One of the guys shined a flashlight, and they were acting like it was a UFO beam, that I couldn't see the source of it. So I'm running around like a kitten chasing a thread or something. And finally I caught them. We all had a laugh. So all these things happened. Plus, remember, those of you who remember, in those days, UFOs was not a legitimate topic for study. It was a tinfoil hat kind of guy study. It was just not the norm. So there was a lot of ridicule all the time surrounding it. Anyway, when I saw those guys fell asleep, I stayed awake, and then the UFO appeared, and you can read about this in Diana Pasulka's book Encounters, but it was a huge orange fireball that had flames coming off it. It was going horizontally, very slowly and silently across the horizon. And there was a little white star following in its trail. And as soon as I saw it, I had stayed awake. I was staring at the universe. As soon as I saw it, it was absolutely not from our reality. It was other than our consensus reality. It didn't communicate that, but somehow it screamed that. What it did for me was it made me realize that all these government institutions were lying to us. Science was lying to us. Government was lying to us. And it began to chip away at what reality is for me. And so that was the main thing. And one last thing, Deb, and I know listen, I'm retired now. I'm no longer working in Silicon Valley. I'm no longer counseling people on business decisions, so I can talk about this stuff more openly. It seemed to me, I'll remember I was a teenager, but it seemed to me, with all the trials and tribulations and going to look for flying saucers and flashlight, it seemed to me that they just glided by and they were waving, "Hi, Len, here we are. Keep the faith going. You've done a good job. See you later." It felt like that kind of a thing, honestly. And to this day, because I'm many, many decades later, I still have that feeling that it was like a friendly flyby.
What was the next day like? I mean, could you just go back to go back to school, or?
Yeah, well, we told our friends. We're at summer school, so but we talked about it to friends. I remember reporting it to my parents, and 2 days later, a report came out in the paper. Remember, this in the wee hours of August 1st. This happened, and we didn't have internet. There wasn't the news took slower. This was near Rochester, New York. And there was a guy in nearby Churchville, New York, a guy named Sidney Zipkin. And there was a big article in the Rochester Democrat and Chronicle that he saw something 4 hours earlier than our sighting. In his sighting, he was a night watchman at a park. He said he saw 2 diminutive beings in shiny black uniforms see his headlights, go into a UFO and take off and go. So what happened was all the press followed that story, and then it got combined and mushed into our story, and it all became it just became a laughing stock. You couldn't separate out which were the sightings. But just for the record, and then I'll finish off with Sydney, but just for the record. So there were 4 different uniformed on-duty police officers who not only saw this thing, but reported it and talked about it to the newspapers. There was a vice president at the university. There was a whole group of people down at who were at the college who were rehearsing a theater performance. They all saw it and reported it. And there were a bunch of people in Geneseo, probably about 40, 45 miles from Brockport. So you could sort of follow, the witness sightings. All of these were reported in the newspaper. When I look back, we didn't believe Sidney Zipkin. We thought, oh my God, okay, we saw something. It changed. It began the process of changing my world, my life. But we didn't believe Zipkin because he went so far as to say they were beings. He lost his job. He was fired. He turned to a life of crime. I wish that I could talk to some of the Zipkin relatives and find out a little bit more about how he lived his life and his story after his report. But things went downhill for Sidney Zipkin, but I understand that he swore to the very end that what he said was the truth. And when I look back at it 50 years later, I look at what he wrote, what he said, that's standard operating procedure. He saw grays and in the shiny uniforms and they took off. So even though we thought it was ridiculous at the time, now with the knowledge of what we know now and other people coming forward and talking about this stuff, he was probably telling the truth.
I just wanted to say something real quick. I think it's so fascinating, the dichotomy that happens with the phenomenon in all aspects. Like people who really believe in Bigfoot refuse to believe in poltergeists. People who believe in UFOs refuse to believe in Bigfoot. It's so bizarre. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, that was with the Zipkin story. I wasn't sure if we were going to include that in the short film. I thought, okay, this is, we're already fitting so much into this short amount. Is the Zipkin story worth it? But when I was talking with my editor, we were like, and how do we connect? How do we go from Len's story to Zipkin's, and make it feel seamless? But that connection was like the disbelief that even Len didn't believe him. And I think that's what's so fascinating about it is he had this amazing sighting, a confirmation, yet even Zipkin was too much, even like you're saying, Deb, where is the bridge too far? Where do you stop, in terms of your belief or what's possible?
We were products, I think, of the time, the government or the intelligence community suppression of this kind of information. It was brilliant to ridicule people and to put that stigma wall up against anyone who would talk about it. So even we who just experienced this thing were victim to that stigma, that the methodology of the stigma approach to keep things quiet. That's what I believe.
And to that,
You feel sorry for the guy.
I'm sorry, go ahead. Say again. Continue, Matt. What were you saying?
Oh, I was thinking you feel sorry for Sidney Zipkin.
I feel sorry for a lot of people that experience this, and then people don't believe them. People make fun of them. They're painted in a certain light, and we have questions in the chat I wanted to bring up. First of all, I want to thank you, Cass Rhymes, for becoming a member. I also want to thank you for the donation. That's really cool of you. So thank you for both. And Mac Mazda here. So we've got questions we're going to ask, and then I'll get to my question. But Mac Mazda apparently is somebody that Courtney knows and is a UFO experiencer, and says, Deb, for me, been leading a dual life. This one really is more of a statement. One normal and one is an experiencer life, and it's very difficult to balance. And I can totally understand that. Let me see what else we got here. Oh, and Jules did confirm that the Fae don't like salt. So if there are any Fae people out there and they would send us their blood screening results, we would just like to take a look at them and just evaluate your sodium content. Standing Stones is actually one of our true crime fans. And Standing Stone says, saw a UFO at close range with another kid when we were 16, sledding up the woods and near a water tower. I remember him saying that. I can't remember Standing Stones as a guy or a gal, but I know they've said on here before it's about 500 feet above the water tower. So, and they have recounted that story several times on this show. So it's like kind of like one of those things. I had a sighting when I was a kid. I want to get regressed so that I can try to remember it. Okay, Mac Moss is saying, yeah, I saw a UFO and interacted with a 3-fingered being in the craft up close. Courtney, do you have any insights on that encounter?
Well, Mac has had a wide range of experiences, and he's pretty public on X about those experiences. So I've been listening to Mac for at least a year about all of his various contact experiences and encounters, and it's very complex. So it's hard to, weigh in on what these experiences might be, but I always provide support to people. Listen with empathy, and especially experiencers who have had things that really defy normal or typical experience, even in anomalous experiences. So Mac is somebody who's always been supportive of other experiencers in the community, just a lovely individual. So I just want to say thanks to Mac for being here tonight and sharing more about your experiences so other people can reach out to you as well. I would encourage other people to reach out to Mac. He's a really great person.
Thank you, Courtney. I also want to say thank you, Mac, for joining. It's a pleasure to meet you. I hope we'll see you here in the chat again, and you're welcome to share your experiences at any time. This question, I believe, is directed to Len, and it's from our mod Jules, who is herself an experiencer. And she says, Len, did you get the cone of silence experience during your sighting? Any temperature shifts, odors, etc.?
No, I don't know exactly what you mean by the cone of silence, but
you didn't hear anything.
Correct. It was soundless, absolutely soundless. All of the witnesses say the same thing, that it was soundless, which was eerie to see this huge fireball. And when I say fireball, it wasn't, there was something solid underneath the orange, like plasmatic glow around it. And then there were flames coming off. The only thing I've ever seen, I've tried to stay up on the UFO literature and the books. And the only thing that I've seen that comes sort of close to it is the descriptions of the Kecksburg, Pennsylvania UFO.
Yeah.
And there might have been a slight acorn kind of shape to this, with the fatter side in front tapering off just a little bit. But if you just looked up at it, it would look spherical, and it was very orange. There were a number of orange UFOs in the 60s for some reason. I guess that was the vehicle, color of choice. But the Malmstrom Air Force Base, where the nuclear missiles were shut down, that was a big orange sphere, and others. So there were no odors, no anything like that. And Diana certainly asked Diana Pasulka asked a lot about this. Did I feel as though there was any communication? I didn't feel. There was one moment during it, like a good Boy Scout leader, I was ready to go report. While I'm watching this, I'm ready to run in the house and call to report it somewhere, and I would miss it. And then all of a sudden, this feeling just came. No, go experience, go watch this. Why would you interrupt your experience to go report it? So I went back out, and I really enjoyed it, and just absolutely took it in. And I did. It wasn't any sort of a telepathic communication. It wasn't anything. There wasn't any direct communication, but I did have this warm feeling that they came by to say hi.
Wow.
And that's inexplicable. DJ, I've got to say, I was a kid, and even I at that age knew that to be that egotistical sounding as a 16-year-old, no one's going to buy this, and I shouldn't even believe myself, because my judgment might not be good enough. But here I am at age 74, still kicking, still digging UFOs. Thank you. but I wasn't looking for an applause. But this is a friendly group for sure.
That's what we do. If you come
I
on cab,
still
you're going to
just
get
think-
applauded.
I still feel today that in some way they were letting me and probably others know they were around.
I just want to say before we're going to answer a question from Boston Bia here. She's our co-host from the Cab True Crime Show, but she's in the chat right now. But I was about a year, maybe 2 years younger than you when I had my sighting in the Hudson Valley during that flap during the 80s.
Big
And
flap.
my first reaction that I said to the kid that was with me is, we're not telling anybody. We're not telling my parents. We're not telling anybody about this because nobody's going to believe us. I
Right.
didn't have the feeling that you had of communication. I just saw it, but I didn't have that interaction I think that you had, but we definitely saw it. I definitely called out what I felt it was. And we all agreed right there. Let's not tell anybody because nobody's going to believe us. And I remember the next morning waking up and being like, holy, I saw a UFO last night. Oh my God. It was one of those things.
Was it in the papers, DJ?
I don't know because at that time I wasn't reading the papers, but
Right.
there was that whole span. I mean, you guys know the books about Hudson Valley UFOs from Linda Zimmerman. And then there was that book that J. Allen Hynek contributed to with two other gentlemen that I can't recall their name. They're less famous gentlemen. Bob Pratt, I think might have been one. I can't remember their names off the top of my head. But in any case, I think it was called Night Siege was the name of the book. And then Linda Zimmerman herself has written probably 5 books on Hudson. And Linda Zimmerman interviewed one of my classmates from high school that her father, who was a police officer, they saw daylight, a big black triangle fly over Montrose, New York, where our high school is. So, and she wasn't the only family that saw that, but they were in Linda's book. And just so happens that I just saw her at my class reunion about a month ago. So anyway, Boston Bia is asking, do you think as the years go by, we see more sightings or less? And then Lulu Bell, we're going to get to your question. I'm going to tackle that one for you. But do you think as years go by, we see more sightings or less? Anybody on the panel that want to respond?
It seems like there's less, kind of traditional flying saucer sightings, but right now there's all these drone incursions, which kind of hard to figure out what's going on there. What's anomalous, what's foreign tech, all this seems really great and obscured. So, maybe in a little while we'll know that what these are, if they are truly anomalous or what, but that's kind of exciting, and frightening the last year, just all these drone sightings. They're happening in Berlin and Germany. I think it's
Denmark, England.
Yeah. And even last year, it was all in New Jersey and all the papers were saying New Jersey, but here in Germany, I'm in Germany right now.
Mhm.
There were drone sightings, here in Southern Germany, in the UK. So it was actually happening internationally last year, even though most of the reports were just saying it was in New Jersey. So I don't know.
It seems like there's more because you have two diverging issues. One problem is that when people are outside and they're walking around, they're looking down generally at their phone. And back in the 80s, for example, we didn't have a phone, so you weren't looking down. Your head was either level and you were talking to somebody with you, or you could potentially be looking up, but you definitely weren't heads down. Now people are looking down, but more people have cameras. So, and there's a lot more, let's say, sensors that are out there looking at things. So it's a very difficult question to ask, Bia, but potentially there's more. And about the drone sightings, we did a show on this because you guys don't know this, but when we experienced the New Jersey drone sightings, people from the True Crime Show were calling me going, what's going on? We got to do what's happening. We got to do a show. So we ended up we got together as a group and we did a show about that. And my supposition that I think is backed up by even Lou Elizondo, what I said at the time, is there are craft up there that are anomalous for sure because of the nature, the 5 observables and even 6 observables And then there are craft up there that are just simply drones that have their sensors targeted on those anomalous craft. But people seeing those from the ground don't know which is which, right? So you have to really, if you're not a trained observer, you might not know. But you may be somebody like Courtney who studies this, who does know. So, but they're probably the majority of laypersons out there don't. So it's really hard to say if there's more, but certainly there are some anomalous craft. And if I'm a government anywhere, I'm going to try to confuse the issue by saying, oh, it's foreign tech, it's black tech, it's this, it's the FAA. As long as you confuse people, they won't know what the hell it is, and they'll forget about it, and they'll go on to their next reality TV show. But if you're not going to say to them, oh, yeah, these are anomalous, we don't know what the hell they are, and we can't do anything about it. That's not going to be the answer. This question right here, I'm going to answer really quick for Lulubelle, is the reason for this. The long-standing tradition is if your job description is national defense and there are craft that are flying into and out of your airspace with impunity that you can't stop them, the answer is not going to be to tell you the truth, because then that makes decision makers look like they're not in control of everything in the sky. But guess what? They're not in control of everything in the sky. That's not new. That's been going on for many, many years. But as people that are involved in, and that is why not only don't you see the United States, you don't see the Russians coming out telling their people this, or the Chinese, or the Japanese, or the Australians, or the Brits, or the Italians, or the Germans, or anybody else. So this is just what governments do. They don't want you to think that they are not in control, but the fact is they're not completely in control. Just listen to Ryan Graves and he'll tell you, or David Fravor, or whomever. So moving right along. Thank you very much, Tim, for your, oh my God. Thank you so much, Tim. Namaste. Tim and Lulu are true crime fans. I have met Lulubelle. I have not had an opportunity to meet her husband, Tim. Thank you very much. This is Dr. Tim Mounts from, they have a show called All Things Unexplained with Tim, CJ, and and Smitty. I almost forgot their third co-host, Tim, CJ, and Smitty. So you guys may end up getting an invitation to go on there. Tim is a good friend, and they do an outstanding show. Dr. Tim Mounts out of North Carolina. Thank you very much for the donations. That is extremely generous of you guys. Let's get back to it. I have a question because I don't know about Matthew's experience. We did hear a little bit about Len's. Would you like to talk about your experience and what you felt? Were you inspired by something, or how do you sort of describe your experience and what the genesis of that may have been?
Experience of
you, because you believe that you definitely saw something, or you dreamt of something, and I don't know if that was inspired by Len's experience or something you saw. Was it paranormality?
No.
How would you describe your experience?
No, I haven't had any experiences.
Why do I think, based on your film, that you did? I don't. Or was
Because,
that?
Didn't you say at the beginning of the film, Matthew, that when you were young?
Oh, yes.
In your
Okay.
bedroom? Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for reminding me. Yeah, that was a dream. That was my worst nightmare as a child, was that, aliens would come into my room, I'd get abducted.
Okay.
So that was like a hypothetical kind of, this was my dream that I had as a kid.
A lot of experiencers describe it as a dream at first. Just saying.
Was that a recurring dream, Matthew?
Yeah, I mean, it was like a reoccurring kind of fear, I would say, from what I remember. The fear was definitely there. But no, as far as I know, I don't have any experiences.
Why was that? Is that a result? I mean, did you read Whitley Strieber's book, Communion? What do you think that was? Was it just something you saw, like Close Encounters, and you're like, oh my God, if these things came in my bedroom, I'd freak out? Like, what was your thing?
Yeah, I mean, in the 90s, there was a lot of UFO films and TV episodes, and I still remember like images that are burned in my brain from like coming down the stairs while my parents were watching a show. Like I think there was one called Intruders, which was probably based off of the Bud Hopkins book. But there was like a hybrid program, and there was like a little alien child or something. I remember seeing that and just being freaked out, and Fire in the Sky. I mean,
Yeah.
that was totally frightening for a child to see. So I think,
Totally. It made
if
them
this
look
was potentially
scary.
real, why would I not be afraid that they're going to come in at night and I'm going to be in some gooey web thing?
I'm gonna tell you, Matthew. I don't think they designed those creatures the way that help me out with his name again, Travis
Walton.
The way Travis Walton just
Well,
described
yeah,
it.
it's fascinating.
But
What he talks
scary.
about it.
Totally. Oh my God. Like that. I mean, he's got to have one of the most credible of all time. Nathan, take it away. Because when I start thinking about Travis Walton,
Yeah, no, it really is incredible, and it's I wish they would remake it with, closer to kind of Travis's experience. I understand why they made it the way they did, but
His experience.
Go ahead.
His experience with the human people, with the glass bulbs over their head. I mean, to me, that's more frightening than these scary grays, in this dark shadow thing. I mean, the fact that there might be humans up there that are either like us or
hybrid.
I mean, that was the thing that freaked me out when Travis Walton said there were these humans that looked at him like as if they couldn't communicate with him unless if he was a foreign creature, an alien, yet that he looked just like them. Like that freaked me out.
Yeah, that's trippy.
That's the world we live in.
He's got to hear. Have you heard Terry Lovelace encounter, Matthew? Have either of you guys?
Know.
Oh, that's
oh
great.
My God. No, Terry Lovelace was that he ended up being a judge advocate on that. He wasn't a JAG. Actually, he was
like an assistant AG or something. He was.
Yeah. Yes. He was like an assistant AG, he district attorney type. But yeah, no, assistant U.S. attorney in Samoa. And there was another state. It might've been Massachusetts. Terry Lovelace's account when he was in the Air Force of being abducted is mind blowing. What he saw aboard the craft. Mind blowing. I recommend you guys.
People.
What's that?
Human looking aliens.
He saw human people. He saw like a puppy, but the puppy had some sort of an implanted eye of some sort. It was really some really weird stuff. He saw kids crying. It was a huge ship with a lot of people. Am I getting any of this wrong, cabbies?
That's largely right. Yeah, he saw some military, like people dressed in military fatigues on this large black triangle. I think the book is called "The Incident at Devil's Den."
Yes,
looking to
I'm
read.
familiar with that. Yeah.
It's very good, and he's done some interviews too within the last few years that are quite good. But I wanted to explore kind of some of the themes that you get at in the story, because I think that there's this struggle in the public debate about UFOs between this fixation on the craft, having the craft, having the bodies, understanding the technology, and yet there's also this parallel but maybe less public conversation happening about the nature of reality itself and the consciousness expanding aspects of these experiences. And what I love about the film, and Len, you kind of talk about this as well, that the film acts as a catalyst that kind of takes the viewer through the same pathway, but introduces them to this notion that reality, as we have accepted it to be, may not be that way. And so, what I often wonder is, how are we going to get, because I'm convinced that reality is not as we think it is, but how are we going to get from point A to point B as a civilization? You're going to have everybody have an experience that kind of unlocks this. What modality, catalyzes this kind of change in the world and transitions us to a different understanding of reality, a different maybe epoch of the human experience, right? And so I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but I think that's the direction we're going. I think it's just challenging to find a clear, articulated path to get there. Because if it's just craft in a hangar someplace, I think that just reaffirms this reality model that we already have, and that's that You know, we have technology, we'll build it, we'll understand it, we'll master this stuff, and then we'll just keep mastering matter. But these encounters seem to speak to a deeper aspect, that matter is not really all that there is to the world. So what are your thoughts on that? How do you think we reconcile those things?
The I had the one UFO incident, and then I've had other paranormal or supernormal or anomalous experiences, probably about 8 or 9, all of which lead me farther away from the Western materialistic view of reality and more into, if you will, a spiritual or idealistic world. And I would think that your show, your question, people who are on these kinds of shows and talking about these stories are all part of the evolutionary process. And a shout out to Jeffrey Kripal down at Rice University, who does Archives of the Impossible, where I had the distinct pleasure of meeting Courtney. And what he is advocating in a number of books and through scholarly academic research is, wait a minute, these things, ghosts and all the rest of it, the out-of-body experiences, these things have been happening to human beings forever. Why are we discarding them, not looking at them because they don't fit the more narrow confines of the scientific investigation? So he says, pick them up out of the dustbin, off the floor, put them back on the table, make the table bigger, and let's have some serious investigation of this. And there are many people, Diana Pasulka's advocating that. There are many investigators researching that. And I think that's the way forward. I think that's what we are doing. Will it happen in my lifetime? I doubt that there'll be answers. I think we're always going to be part of the riddle of life here. One last thing, and then I'll shift it over to Matthew. DJ, when you were talking about the conferences and whatnot, and the one you went to, I was afraid to go to conferences. I thought it would be tinfoil clown show mania going on. My eyes were utterly open. There's serious researchers, journalists, experiencers, scientists. It's just incredible the brain power that's being applied to exactly those kinds of topics, Nathan, at these conferences where people feel free to be talking about this stuff. So I think we are making progress on it, and
that's a good point.
And I hope that this show helps a little bit.
Yeah, perhaps the fact that we're not being laughed out of rooms anymore shows that there is some evolution, even if it's not as quick as we'd like. Matthew, would you like to tackle that, sir?
Yeah, I'd say when I made this movie, my guiding principle was, you think you know what UFOs are, but there's so much more. And that was kind of like the guiding thought I had from beginning to end, and keeping in mind like an audience of people who are in the UFO world, believers, but also people who are skeptical. So I think everyone's kind of on their own journey and kind of can accept only so much. So when I did this film, I used Jacques Vallée kind of as a guiding post, separating into 3 chapters, kind of the physical, the psychological, and the what I called personal, which kind of goes a little bit deeper, and then kind of ending it on the social, which I've had people who come up to me and said, well, that's kind of the most interesting part of the film for me, because, I don't really believe in all this stuff. But I thought ending it kind of with some of these questions, even if it is just part of our folklore for some people, that, maybe there's a way into this subject which still is relevant and I think important, because there's so many different ways we can look at this. And so, I made the film for people who may be skeptical, kind of opening that door a little bit to people, just saying, hey, even if you're skeptical, just, listen to people. There's some interesting ways we can look at this whole topic. There might be something interesting here, as well as people who are into the world and, just want to see something done, in a different way in this format.
It is a very fascinating thing, because with with the paranormal ghost situation, with what we associate with UFOs and whomever operates them, and even with Bigfoot, I've all of them have these aspects to them that are inexplicable, because I think what you're getting at is, yeah, okay, then they have a technology that we don't have yet. And what Nathan's getting after is, okay, great, they have a technology we don't have yet, but what does this all mean? What were those beings that interacted with those children at the Ariel school in Zimbabwe? What were they getting after with that? What were they really trying to tell those kids beyond save the environment? And there may be multitude of more messages than that of what we need to think about in order to connect and get to some higher plane. I'm going to use like that sort of Dan Shermanism from his book, Way Above Black, where he was communicating. And if you guys haven't read that, by the way, I just want to mention everybody, Psychedelic in the Sky, that film is pinned to the top of the chat. If you'd like to watch it, you can click on that link and it will take you there. Copy that for your YouTube. But Way Above Black, go ahead, sir.
I also wanted to say, when I first met Len, I said, "Can I talk to you?" Len told me, "I'm only talking about the UFO." And I said, okay. So we got into the room, but we ended up talking about more. I was being a little bit pushy, but I said, we gotta talk more. You gotta tell me more about what happened. And it's something hard to talk about. And also, I can see Len's reluctance. He didn't know me, doesn't know how I'm going to make this movie, how I'm going to depict things, So, and even for myself, with some of these stories and trying to fit into the film, it was, keeping in mind that I'm making this film for people who are not part of this UFO world. How do you fit it in and keep people still there, not turning it off? And that was something kind of difficult to weave in there. So in a way, I kind of had to play the skeptic a little bit in the narration, kind of saying, "Hey, I don't know, maybe this is too much right now. Like, we stick with UFOs." But it is a tricky thing, I don't know how we introduce that to people. I mean, I tried a little bit in this film to kind of introduce that into this UFO narrative, saying, "Hey, there's more here. Might have to come back to it later."
I was a press secretary for 1976 Jimmy Carter campaign and a congressional press secretary, and Matthew's questioning was withering. I could not stand up to it. I talked about way more stuff than UFOs. He's being modest. He should go to 60 Minutes.
I mean, for us, I think I speak for all the cavities here. We have an enormous amount of reverence for those of you filmmakers that will tackle this topic, because you are so limited. There's almost like a club of, you got, James Fox and Darcy Weir, and just only so many people that will filmmake about these topics and not be afraid to tackle it and what their peers might think. I think James Fox has a really good story about that. Someone told him, man, it must be 30 years ago, "Hey, this is going to ruin your career, man." He's like, "Okay, whatever," and 7 films later, he's doing well. Courtney,
There's
go
still
ahead.
such a stigma.
Yeah.
One of my ideas was that I would try to get this into the New York Times. I've published a few pieces with them. So this was kind of my goal, was to try to get a UFO related story. So that was one of the reasons why I kind of went into the subject from different angles, that it wasn't just like, here's the case, there's different ways we can look at this, from the outside. But yeah, there's still a big stigma around it. There's another site that I've had work published there, and months went by, I didn't hear from them, and they said, we love the animation, we love the film, but it's not our topic. But so there's still a big stigma around this. So,
But this is a short, we look at time. Nathan likes to talk about time. This is such a short period of time from the 40s until now. Such a short period of time. But if you take that 80 years and you look at it now, we've come a long, long way. From 80 years ago to now. Even in the New York Times, and Americans for Safe Aerospace, and Ryan Graves and David Fravor and Lou Elizondo and David Grush. And even though those guys are materialist UFO guys, they are opening the door for you guys and for the part of it, and for Nathan and Exo Academia and James Iandoli, you know, guys that are talking about, okay, it's not all about just the craft and the technology. Okay. There is a whole nother component to reality that you are probably not, and me and a lot of us probably aren't sensing. So I think we've made progress. It's just that our lives are so short, and we want the book to begin and to end during our lifetime. And the fact is that it's not going to.
I just wanted to chime in that people like Lou Elizondo and others have pointed out to us that the reason there's skepticism still so profoundly, and so much of this dichotomy of I can believe this but not this, might be because that was created for us. And there is also, we've also been told by someone who worked for the CIA that some of the movies that we watch are trying to push us the way so that we're more open. We can actually statistically see that more and more people are becoming more open-minded when they. So we have a big task ahead of us to fight whatever psychological thing was done to us to make us not be open-minded.
Keep going, Courtney. Go for it, my friend.
Well, you guys are all just bringing up a great segue, because I just watched Carl Nell's presentation from the recent Seoul Symposium, and he talks about these 5 Roman generals, and he kind of parallels what happened in history with them and how they are Roman emperors, and how the Roman emperors handled things in their time versus the UFO issue that's happening right now. So I do have a specific question, but I wanted to point out, Len, that he talked about the 1952 to 1969 era specifically as being one era of time of like the Blue Book era, where control of the UFO reality, these are his words, was even more so than the previous era. And he talked about the previous era and things, you know, having this grave miscarriage of justice about authority and power and how it was all built in. So he talks about the future and this next generation and disclosure specifically as the great expectation. So I'm not expecting you to have seen this at Seoul or anything else, but I'm just asking you, as someone who went through that period and lived through that period of time where it was more restrictive, closed off, the stigma was high, our own government was doing the giggle factor as a way to silence people and even stop reporting because of it. When you think about this next generation, potentially millennials, Gen Xers, and your generation included, how would you see that happening in the next great expectation, balancing not falling back into another era of secrecy and riding this way forward? What would you see? What would you see in terms of this UFO issue bringing about a great expectation? How would you define it from your own personal experience and what you've been through?
I think what your show, Calling All Beings, represents is a way for experiencers to tell their story. I believe that talking to experiencers really is key. I know that there are many researchers who feel that way too. I worked in government. I agree with AJ. I don't see a big disclosure moment coming. There's national security involved. They're just not going to let our enemies know what we have, what's going on. So I understand the interest in that, but also the government lies to you. So I think a show like this that allows experiencers to come in and tell the story, and the work you do, Courtney, is the way forward. A quick anecdote: when I saw the UFO, even my close friends, if I came and started talking about the UFO, they'd walk away. They wouldn't want to hear about it. Len's cuckoo, all that sort of stuff. Even though, I played sports, I had good grades, I was fully engaged. And that was like that. I didn't talk about it very much growing up. Then finally, when I was in my 60s, I believe, I finally went to a UFO conference in Laughlin, Nevada, one that Paola Harris had. And I took a break from the presentation. I was standing outside in the auditorium, in the lobby, and somehow I was talking to someone just in very hushed tones. Say, yeah, I saw a UFO, and you know, the funny thing, we went out looking for UFOs that night. Some way people heard that, and I was then, a camera and a light came and shining on me, a semicircle of people came around me, and I sort of backed, you know, they wanted more, they wanted me to say more for the camera, and I just sort of backed out. I wasn't prepared for that. That showed me immediately the change in time. That's an anecdote that clearly represents, people would run away from me before, and now, you know, now they're willing to listen, and in fact, have a show like yours, which I think is key to getting that side of the story. I commend you all for your show, cabbies.
Thank you so much for saying that. And I want to say, I thought you had on a leather blazer, and it seems to me anybody that has a leather blazer, think about Rocky Balboa from Rocky 1. Is cool. Right? Is that a leather blazer?
It's a jacket. It's a jacket. It was cool here in Northern California. We had a lot of rain, and my wife doesn't let me turn the heat up very high, so I just wanted to have something warmer on.
Okay, but you should have a leather blazer, and you know what? When you do your next film with Matthew, be like, "Hey, I want to star in the movie. If I wrote the screenplay and to star in the movie, otherwise you're not getting my script." You know,
You're
gotta
in.
play. Yeah, it worked for Sylvester Stallone. Len, this can work for you. Okay. I got to star in the movie. All right. We have some great questions here, which I've starred. Amber has a great one here that I would like you got, Deb, I don't want to cut you off. Is it all right if I ask this one?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I want to get this one around the panel. Nathan, we'll start with you. Do you think people missing from national parks, we covered this on Cab recently, mysteriously could have been abducted by UFOs? Do you think that is at least one of the sources of these apparent missing persons where they don't find anything?
I think I do. I think it's very possible. I mean, the national parks are massive, so people go missing for lots of reasons. So not just being abducted. From what we understand from the literature and the anecdotes, abductions happen everywhere, even in the middle of big cities. I think there was a Netflix show about a woman who had an experience in the middle of Manhattan. So they happen all over the place. It's really, the issue here is if the people can't be found anymore, they disappear. There's a lot of disappearances, and those things are really perplexing and disturbing, right? I think the wilderness, you know, represents a lot of things for us, right? It's this void that we don't understand, and we're not masters in that domain. We're very much subject to the forces of that domain, and as a result, it has this incredible power and mystery for us. So the short answer is I do think so. I don't think all of them are, but it does seem to happen everywhere.
And before Courtney tackles this, I just want to say, David Paulides is basically the pioneer in this space in the missing persons, and he has these sort of earmarks that make it a missing 411 case, and some of them are really freaky where they don't find. I mean, if you have a gun or you have a weapon or a Gore-Tex jacket, that could be visible for 50 years. You know, boots and sometimes cross-country skis, all kinds of things, and not a stitch of anything is found from that person. And I just want to shout out X-Zone Missing, X-Zone Missing on YouTube. He uses AI. It could be a woman for all I know to narrate the story, but has a brilliant retelling of the same cases that Dave Paulides does. Court, do you believe that some of the people missing from these national parks could have been abducted?
Yeah, I just want to read what David Paulides said about this issue, because Paige Fox, who is an attorney and is doing a whole project on Black sites and people going missing around these Black sites around the U.S., you know, she reached out to me and David saying, you know, she was referred to us because of our research and what we do. And so David Paulides responded, and he said that, and who's interested in this issue. He's written 12 books. He's produced 3 documentaries that went to #1 in the world. And he also said his 3rd documentary addresses your questions. And so it's called Missing 411, the UFO Connection. And I'd like to refer you to that actual documentary that he did on the UFO and 411 missing person connection. And I think you'll find a lot of answers in that. And, you know, I highly regard David's work. I think he's one of the best. So I think abductions are certainly potentially connected to it, but I think it could be a whole lot more. Simple
And
answer.
The one guy, the one guy in that movie, his experience happened like 9 years after Len, maybe
Carl
something
Higdon?
like that. That
Carl
gentleman,
Higdon?
yeah, Carl Higdon, was that his name?
Higdon, yeah, Carl
Ab-
Higdon.
Yeah, I mean,
I
that
looked
was
that up.
it's a great narrative. He was abducted when he was elk hunting, and he found he and the elk were both in the craft. And then, in short, because he had been had a vasectomy, they returned him. They said, "You're of no use to us." So that story was in the papers back in the 70s. But thank you very much for that one. Deb, would you like to take a stab at this question, and then we'll go to Len and Matthew?
Yeah, actually, my bigger concern is that this is an issue that goes well beyond the national parks. Although he focuses on that, if you go look at statistics for missing persons, it's much worse than people realize. I was watching someone who was visiting reservations in the United States, and he said there's an enormous amount of people that go missing from reservations, for instance. And people are just not covering it. You know, people in poverty have been complaining about that for a long time. You know, people are not covering this problem to the significance that it needs to be covered. But the other side to this is not all the things that happen in the parks are, you know, people disappearing. There's other really strange phenomenon that happens. And there's just something about being away from civilization that just seems to invite these incidents. So yes, of course, I think some abductions can happen there, but I also think really weird things happen there too, including, by the way, there's a story of people who have just left civilization and are running around in those parks.
Yeah, I think Bigfoot could be some of them. I mean, there's so many different things. And I just, as a PSA, I think this stat is correct. Indigenous women, 15 times more likely to either go missing or be murdered than the national average. 15 times more. So just to put in your hat there. And Payne Lindsay of Vanished and Up and Vanished is doing great work on and done some great work on missing Indigenous women. The other thing I wanted to say, I want to bring this up now because I kind of eschewed when we've done a lot of Bigfoot on the show. Nathan introduced me to Bigfoot. I'm fascinated with him. I listen to Bigfoot encounters probably several nights per week. But what I want to say is I eschewed Dogman, and I kind of wasn't so sure. Quite recently, there was 2 couples in Mississippi that were riding in those side-by-sides that carry like 4 persons. There's like front seats and back seats. And they have very, very good thermal image of a Dogman female holding a child. And you can see the snout, you can see the ears, you can see it standing on 2 legs. And so kind of like what you said earlier, Nathan, you think you know what's real and what's BS. And then when you think you know that, you find out something that you hadn't even considered. And I can direct you guys. It's on the National Dogman website. It was like on their front page. And when Matt Knapp from Bigfoot Crossroads, who also was skeptical of Dogman, is like, oh my God, this video is very, very compelling. Len, what's your take on this, sir?
Well, I can't really add anything to what has already been said. I try to stick just to my lane and to stick to my experiences. But I have read about and listened about the disappearances in the national forest. It's utterly fascinating. And I'm glad people are taking a look at that. And I don't disbelieve what's going on, especially because I've heard that author Paulides talk about it. He sounds very credible, but because it's not, I'm just trying to stick to the things that I've experienced rather than speculate on others.
Now, I want to say this, Matt, before you go. I mean, one of the Paulides ones I heard, and it was recounted on X Zone Missing. This was like a ranger, and she was a ranger. She had radioed in. She got out of her vehicle, and when they found her vehicle, it was still running with the lights on. Nothing found of her, nothing. And that was in the I don't know if it was the Land Between the Lakes, but the Great Smoky Mountain National Park. And they didn't find a stitch of her, nothing. Tell me how weird that is.
Mm.
In fact, the new rules of engagement for rangers going on that specific trail, which is pretty remote, you have to have 2 rangers, and you have to check in every 15 minutes. But they will not sound a ranger solo on that same area of the park that she was patrolling. Please, your thoughts. Uh-oh.
Me?
Yes, sir.
Oh, yeah, I don't have much to add. I would just say, when I heard the question, I immediately thought of the Missing 411 movie. I don't know the exact title. The Pleiades one that's specifically on people potentially being abducted in the wilderness. Do you know the name of it?
Yeah, I just shared it. It's
The
Missing
Hunted?
Okay.
411, the UFO connection.
Yeah, so I mean that's really my only exposure to this topic. But I mean, Carl Higdon's story is in there, a few others that are really compelling. So I would encourage you to watch that one.
I've watched it 3 times. And Missing 411, The Hunted. I don't know if you haven't seen that. I know some of the cabbies have seen it. That Tom Messick story, that 80, I think he was 82-year-old man that was in a line of 4 or 5 guys. They walked 40 yards in the woods. He had a rifle. They have not found, he only had one eye. He couldn't even walk very far. He had a heart condition. They have not found any of his gear, his Wellington boots, his flannel, his rifle, nothing. They had 300 searchers on that thing. And what's the name of this? This is in New York, in the Adirondacks, Len, called, I can't think of Lily Pond. It's called, near Horicon, New York. Lily Pond. And they have not found any, can't figure out what happened to him. It's just yes, sir.
Are all the Missing 411 movies have a UFO connection?
No, this
Or is
one
it just the one?
is not. This
Okay.
one's called Missing 411, The Hunted, and it basically, for the most part, it focuses on hunters. And then there is one experience in Ohio where there is a woman in a tree stand. So picture a woman. She's a woman in a tree stand in Ohio. She can hunt on her own property. That's how big her property is. She sees what looks like a predator. You remember Predator? It was kind of like clear, see-through kind of thing. So she's in this, she takes out her flip phone. She takes a photo of this predator thing. And then at the same time, there was her grandson was over at the local high school about 5 miles away, and they're having band practice, and a UFO flew right over the football field. Really, really weird. She said this thing literally, I could see something that was there, but it would look like cellophane. You could see right through it in the trees. Freaked her out. She does not hunt anymore on her own property.
Well, that was going to be something I was going to say. I was out in the woods. I live in Alaska, so I was out in the woods and deep in the woods, and I was thinking about how beautiful it was because it was the first snow, and there was the crystals in the trees and on the flowers all crystallized. So I was taking photos, all of it, and I was just struck for a moment of how beautiful and peaceful and serene it was. But then I had this other thought, like so many people are scared away from the woods because of their experiences, because of a camping trip or because of a solo drive in the night. And there are these fears, that happen. And so I was kind of just remorseful a little bit in the woods thinking, well, this is sometimes a life-changing experience for people. And then they get afraid of the woods,
Do you ever get afraid?
I don't. I don't ever get afraid in the woods because I grew up in the country in the woods. And so, it's peace for me and healing for me to be there, and I have to be there. And so I haven't been deterred, but I definitely have felt like at home in Pennsylvania at times, weird feelings in the woods, definitely like sensing something else there. But never have been truly like terrified and afraid, like you're hearing about, these missing people and other things. So yeah, it's just a meditative thought that occurred to me while I was out there last weekend after it snowed. So anyway, just a thought.
I've
I'm
told
almost
Courtney.
afraid to admit it, but after kind of going into this UFO world and, filling my head with all these stories, I grew up in the suburbs, but when I go out and stay a night in the, cabin out by the lake or the forest, before I go to bed, I'm having those thoughts like, oh my God, I don't know
Man,
if that's normal or not, if that's
I think
healthy,
that's
but
pretty normal. I think it is. Yeah.
it is normal. You did it this didn't you do it over the summer? Nathan, when was the
Yeah.
last time you
Oh,
did
no,
a cabin?
Just this past weekend, I was.
There you go.
Yeah. So yeah, it's you just make room for more possibility, right? And I think that's healthy. But you have to, as Courtney used the word meditate, you have to kind of meditate on that discomfort in a way, like explore why you feel that way and try to find peace with that feeling. And that, that goes for new experiences generally, right? We're often pretty reluctant to have new experiences that might be out of our comfort zone. And they can be really terrifying, but just like what I tell my kids, it's like they'll say things like, well, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to start. It's like, well, you just start. You start and you have experiences and you keep going and you get, you gain that confidence. So it's, easier said than done, obviously, but it's part of the process.
I mean, I can tell you first of all, there's a new creator out there who I love. He has a show called Sasquatch Theory. His name is Miguel Ramirez. He's from Missouri, and he has done some amazing work. He goes out, he interviews people on site. He'll go and camp out with people. He'll go and investigate their property, and his interview skills are just, he lets people tell their story. I heard one I just share with you guys from last night. It was a guy from a particular bayou in Louisiana. He had been going in this bayou and hunting there since he was a child, and he was probably in his 40s, and he told a number of experiences. But the seminal experience that has caused him to change his behavior was a Bigfoot through a branch, what he believes is Bigfoot through a branch, and almost hit him. And then one came buzzing right by his ear. He said if he would have turned his face to the left, it would have hit him in the face. And, he was out there hunting and so forth. He ran back to the car, and he told 3 or 4 other experiences, but I believe there was 2 or 3 experiences during this particular hunting trip, and he doesn't hunt anymore. Like, he's done. And he won't go out there alone. Like, he would go out there and hunt alone and camp alone, and he won't anymore.
Yeah.
I went out in the I don't know if it was Apalachicola, but it was in the woods in northern Florida, north of Pensacola. I went to go bigfooting with a group. And I remember it was time to get firewood. And I know the missing 411 stuff, and I know the Bigfoot stuff. And I'm like, am I going to leave these guys and take off and go out into the woods alone and get firewood? And I said, I'm going to. And, the Indians say, don't leave the light of the fire. That's the thing. Did we have a Bigfoot experience that night? No, we didn't. But I was thinking about it, and I was like, I'm going to go get the damn firewood. And that's it. Did I, go barefoot and connect with the earth and say some prayers and stuff? Yes, I did that shortly after we got there. But when it came time to go get firewood, I was like, oh man, is this a good idea or not? So anyway, we got about 5 minutes left. Let's get some parting shots from starting with Nathan.
Yeah, I can't thank you guys enough for being here and for creating this material. And I know that it's not something you created out of nothing. You had experiences that led you to that moment, and it shines through. It's really impressive to see. So I hope folks can take a look at that, and it's super watchable. And it as I've said before, it it really takes the person on their own journey. So I think you do a good job of like inserting this little mind virus in a way to kind of get people to pursue this. And I think that that's really, really helpful. And Len, I can tell that it's really made a dramatic impact on your life. And I can tell that it's just a small part of a larger set of experiences that have also shaped your life. And I think there's something really meaningful and powerful to that. And I just really appreciate your willingness to come and share yourself with us and your time with us. And we look forward to seeing what you guys do in the future. So hope you keep up with the topic and the community. It's good stuff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Len, I just want to say thank you, for being here. It's so special to have you, because I think about when we first met all those years ago in 2022 now, and also the other people that we met that night at dinner and where they've gone in the field and how amazing that first connection always is, right? For people who are experiencers who share some part of this journey. So I'm just so happy I've been able to watch yours from since we've met, and now this project that's come out. And I really do feel that this project is a game changer for people who are having their own research and journey to see something that is not military, not fearful, not threat related. And it opens the process of discovery in people's minds and curiosity, and allow them to keep that journey very much like almost childlike. Like, what does this mean? How can I understand this and not be worried with fear like we've discussed tonight? It's just very beautiful project. And I am very happy to have met you, Matthew. Thank you so much for coming on with Len and sharing your part of the project. And I'm also, like Nathan said, very excited to see what comes next.
Thank you.
Thank you, Courtney. I've got to tell you that when we were at that, the Archives of the Impossible, you and I were having lunch. Everybody was having lunch, and we were talking and sharing experiences. And then I saw that Diana Pasulka was at a table around another crowd of people. And I said, well, I've got to go meet her, because we had communicated with email, but I didn't want to interrupt. I didn't, I didn't have any kind of an introduction. I was all new to this sort of stuff. And you just said, go for it. Go through it.
That's Courtney.
No, it was almost like she pushed me out of the safety zone. And so I made my connection with Diana. So thank you. And thank you for that, and for your other support and tips and things through the years. I watch what you do carefully. It's great stuff.
Agreed. Debs.
So, what I is something that we had conversation about.
Deb's phone is crapping out now. When we get to the goodbyes, her phone is crap. Debs, we can't hear you.
Deb, put it in the chat. We're only getting like every third word.
Yeah. It's like,
yeah. I really want to hear what she's got to
I'm
say,
sure it's
though.
beautiful. And
yeah, it sounds like the Bigfoot Sierra sounds.
forgot about this.
I want to say, guys, thank you so much. I think it's so cool. You encouraged us to get Matthew to come on, the filmmaker, and I know it's really late in Germany, so we're 6 hours ahead. So thank you for staying up for us, Matthew, and thank you, Len, for sharing this. Like, to be able to come and listen to an experiencer, to open our minds, to experience what you did through you, is a treat for the cabbies. So I really appreciate this. We would love to have both of you on again to talk UFOs and talk about the phenomenon and consciousness. And you guys are welcome to come on and co-host as well when we have another experiencer. So thank you so very much, sir. I appreciate it. And you too, sir.
Thank you. I really, this show is fun. It's got a good mix of fun and humor and seriousness and a variety of viewpoints and input. Excellent show. Thank you very much for the invitation. Great.
Hold on before you guys go. I want to see if you can see the sunset. I'm going to put you onto the window.
Oh,
Gorgeous.
wow.
Beautiful.
Winter Wonderland.
Stunning.
The Degas winter painting.
It's kind of a nice parting shot for all of our coming together. I just wanted to see that before we cut out.
Beautiful.
Courtney
Thank
has
you
it
so
rough.
much.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Matthew. Go
I was
ahead.
gonna say thank you so much for having me and allowing me to talk and share the film with your audience. And it's a blast. You guys have a new fan, and thank you, Len, for sharing your story with me and trusting me. So yeah,
You got
thanks for
4
inviting
new
me on.
fans, and this will be in the show notes for the podcast as well as YouTube. And your work is beautiful, and I look forward to contact me anytime if you're putting out something else. We would love to have either or both of you guys on. This is just for Len. He's got to get the leather blazer. We want to see the Rocky Balboa blazer for next time. Hey, how you doing, Len? Right?
I prefer very cool in the gang. And he was wearing that, I think, at Seoul last year. So very cool in the gang.
No, he looks cool. He looks cool as hell, man. He really does. And I have a good Pennsylvania doc that I found on I think it's on Netflix or Amazon to share with you. But it's all Pennsylvania Bigfoot, orbs, UFOs. It's really cool. You can be like, yo, those are my people.
Yeah,
Pennsylvania.
The Pennsylvania
Courtney,
people are definitely my people.
Didn't you have a relative who saw one in Pennsylvania around a little bit around the same time as mine?
Yeah, I didn't know that because you had told me when we first met about your book, or you wrote an article about your experience. And so I didn't know the year or anything. And then when I saw the short come out, I saw the year and I was like, oh my gosh, it was almost, I think, the same year that my dad had his sighting on just south of New York in upstate Pennsylvania, just south of Binghamton, New York.
It's very interesting.
It is.
The familial, maybe the familial continuum that's going on.
I know. I
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah, and
Totally.
Courtney had a sighting with her daughter in the car as well.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
there's that. So,
Yeah,
Yeah.
so the generations move on. Yeah.
Yeah.
so thank you
I
guys.
thought I
Well,
heard Deb.
Deb, can we hear you?
Is she there?
If you guys can hear me now.
Yes.
Because I was trying to tell you guys, I wrote a whole bunch of stuff in the chat, like Courtney said, and no one said anything.
I'm sorry. Okay.
So, like I was saying, first of all, that just what I surmised from this is, again, it's not about the UFO, guys. It's not about the ghost. It's not about the Bigfoot. It's about the person that's standing in front of that, experiencing it. And it really is almost just one little tiny thing in life can change you from being one thing to being another. And then you're going to discover that the more you look into the paranormal. And then the other thing I was going to say was my second question was going to be for Matthew to describe briefly his other film topics, because he did other films. But since we're near the end, maybe just say it real fast. And thank you guys, both of you, very much for coming.
Thank you, Deb. Other films that you got, Matthew, would you?
Yeah, I've made a couple other animated shorts. One is called Santa as a Psychedelic Mushroom. It's about the potential shamanistic origins of Santa Claus and the Amanita muscaria in Lapland. So you can find that online if you type in Santa as a mushroom or Santa as a psychedelic mushroom, or my site, MatthewSalton.com. You'll find that work. There's another movie about a musician in the 60s who made a beautiful record with the Wrecking Crew. When he was 16, he had lost his leg, and he made this album and then disappeared after that. And this album became kind of a cult album that had a following. People around the world were listening to it. And I found him and found out what happened to him and told his story through an animated film. That's another good one. There's another movie, a feature-length movie I made called Dwarves Kingdom, about little people in China who work in a kind of demented Disneyland, like a modern-day freak show. There's 100 little people who kind of live in a Snow White village that this Chinese entrepreneur made. So I made a movie about them and their dreams, where they came from. You can find that on Canopy online as well. Rent through your local library. It's available.
Deb, I'm so glad you asked that question, because now we know Matthew's other work. That is so cool, Matthew. Thank you, man. So you guys got other stuff. Go to MatthewSalton.com. You can get the list of his filmography and get into it. And see, Deb, even though she typically will ask another question when we're trying to close the show, it ends up being a good one. So thank you, Deb, and thank you, Matthew. Yeah. All right. On behalf of everybody on the panel, everyone in the chat, Jules, and everybody who contributed tonight, Boston Bia's there, Scott's there, other mod. We got a couple mods in there tonight. Thank you so much, everybody. On behalf of everyone, this is DJ saying peace out, one love, and we will see you down the road.